uh, page Yud Aleph. I'm sorry, what did I say page Yud Aleph for? Page Ches, excuse me, that we were speaking about the level of Mishabacher, the Yaakov Bonov, that's the level of the revelation that was by Matan Torah. That's similar to the difference, Mishabacher B'Yaakov Bonov is similar to the difference that we had concerning the difference of the mitzvahs of the Avos before Matan Torah to after Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, it was everything having to do with Seder Ishtalshalos. It was in Surah Sata, reached the Surah Le'ela according to the level of the Nevroim, as opposed to after Matan Torah, where it was the Bitlag Zera, that Al Yoinim Yal Tachtoinim, Tachtoinim Al Yoinim could go down to Tachtoinim, etc. So then we can have the level, the Bocher B'Yaakov Bonov, and established a Rish Chodesh of Geula. That's a level of higher than Seder Ishtalshalos coming down, because that's the idea of Rish Chodesh of Geula, and that's why by Matan Torah it says on Nochi Avayel Lekach Tzitcha Mert Mitzrayim. That shows that something that's higher in the world, rather not introducing himself as I am Hashem that created the heavens and the earth, which the creation of heavens and earth has to do with Seder Ishtalshalos. So now we're going to go back to the Zohar that spoke about that in Rosh Chodesh there are two Roshin, there are two heads. Chodesh, which is the moon, has to do with Malchus, and Malchus receives from two heads, the two heads of Yaakov and Yosef, corresponding to the spheres of Tiferes and Yesod. So Ois Dalet, line 15, fourth page of the Maim. Valpiza Yuvan Gama in the Rosh Chodshechem, Train Roshin, Yaakov and Yosef. According to this, we also understood the idea of the heads, plural, of months. That there are two heads for every month. There's Yaakov and Yosef, and we also mentioned the Maimer that there is a certain aspect of it that we call it two, but really the Zohar says they're one. The way there is the heads of Yaakov and Yosef in every Rosh Chodesh. It's explained in Tanya, and at length in the very well-known Hemshech of Rosh Hashanah of the Rebbe Rashab concerning this topic. Shebachol inyan be'olam, in every inyan in the world, in every matter of the world, yesh guf. This is the Maimer of Tafshin. I'm sorry, not the Rebbe Rashab, the Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe of Tafshin Yud. In every matter in the world there is a body and a soul of it. Even if we're not talking about a physical body, there's like Oiris and Kalim. There is even Malachim have a spiritual body, etc. Move on from this is understood also in the godly life force and flow that gives vitality and brings those entities into existence. There need to be both these levels of a body and a soul of the godly life force. What each one is responsible for its particular level. The idea behind this is, as it's known, there are two types of unions. In the spheres above, there are two types of mating. Specifically, in the mating of Chachma Bina, there are two types, Yichud Chitzayni v'Yichud Pnimi. There is an external Yichud, which that is necessary for the worlds to all the time go on, and there's an inner Yichud, there's a higher level, where that comes about through our Avodah, through Torah mitzvahs, also known the Hainu Yichud Ruchni v'Yichud Gufni. There is the spiritual and the bodily mating, which again, one being the external and one being the inner one. The difference is that the external one is something that's there constantly. It's always there, because that's what's necessary for the worlds to exist. That Chachma comes down to Bina, and the Seichel comes down to the Midas, and so on. But for extra power. That is coming down through our avodah. That is not constant. That comes from time to time. Shebachlolos in general, who inyan top of the next page, Yaakov and Yosef. That there is Yaakov, which shows on one type of yichud, one type of mating of the spheres, and Yosef is a different type of mating of the spheres. Yaakov and Yoni yichud chitzayni. Yaakov is about an external type of yichud. We're talking about Yaakov being mashpia into Malchus, and Yosef, Teferes being mashpia into Malchus, and Yosef, which is Yesod, being mashpia into Malchus. Who inyan yichud Yaakov and Rachel, that external yichud, that is the union and the mating between Yaakov and Rachel. Rachel is also the level of Malchus. V'afshe Yaakov oisis yivka. Though Yaakov is the same letters like the word breaking through. When does breaking through come about? When there's such an overflow of energy, such an overflow of vitality that bursts and breaks through any covering. So therefore, one would think that it would be not just an external type of unity, it would be an inner type of unity, a higher type of unity. Still in all, which comes down through this bursting forth is only a level of array. That's why it's called the yichud chitzayni, the yichud of Yaakov. The Yosef hu yichud pnimi. Yosef shows on this inner type of mating and union. Ki Yosef maloshen tesefes. Yosef is the idea of an addition and an increase, like we said before, that through Torah mitzvahs, for example, we add and cause an increased life force over the basic life force that is necessary for the existence of the world. In Chassidus, it's explained that the level of Tosefes, the additional level of the Yosef, is a inyan Tosafte shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu shemerubah leikar. This is about Hashem's increase, which is more than the principle. Ordinarily, when you add, so then the principle is the main thing, and then you have, in addition to the principle, you have something more. But by Hashem, it's not that way. When Hashem increases, his increase is much greater than the principle, the actual keren, what it's called, as the Chazal say. So the idea of Yosef is as well an idea of an increase of Hashem. And what's it? Hashem's increase? It's a drawing down from the essence, from a level that's beyond Seder Ishtalshlus, even though Yosef is seemingly a lower sphere. It's the level of Yesod, but it's Yesod coming in to mate with Malchus, to create the Hashpahs, the spiritual children. That comes all the way from the level of Keser and even higher than it, just like in the mating of a husband and wife down here, brings down the greatest power, the power of birth, which is higher than the Seder Ishtalshlus. And from that level, it comes down all the way to Malchus. And it doesn't just stop by Malchus, but it creates things and is mashpia into this world. Through Malchus, it comes down into the worlds beneath Malchus, beneath Atzilus, until the lowest of the low. So in other words, specifically Yosef, that reaches from the most highest level, he causes that, or through him it comes down from the highest level to the lowest level. Therefore, so now once we know that Rosh Chodesh has both these type of revelations, the Yichud Chitzayni and the Yichud Pnimi, the external mating of Yaakov, the internal mating of Yosef. So the Rebbe earlier in the Maimer said that the Hamshacha of Rosh Chodesh, the Gilui of Rosh Chodesh, is based on and as a result of the bittul that comes before Rosh Chodesh, Ki Yipaked Moshevecha, that when will David HaMelech be remembered when he is absent, his seat is empty, just like when is the moon born after the moon has completely disappeared. So he says, line 11, and corresponding to these two levels of Yaakov and Yosef in the Hamshach of Rosh Chodesh, has to be the two levels that we mentioned previously. Also, in the preparation for this, in the avodah of your place your seat will be empty. We need to prepare for this in our external garments of thought, speech, and deed. And not only do we need to prepare for this in our external matters, also in our inner powers of Chachma Bina V'das, we also need to prepare for this until the level of delight and will. All of these things need to be in a way of preparation and of bittul to be able to receive these two levels of the Yichud and Rosh Chodesh, both the Yichud Chatzoni and the Yichud Pnimi. Now, we also established earlier in the Maimer that there is something that all the months of the year share in common, and all the Rosh Chodeshim share in common. But then Rosh Chodesh Nisan takes whatever Rosh Chodesh is about to a higher level. So he says in Ois Hey, line 17, all that we mentioned previously is about the two levels of Rosh Chodesh, Yaakov and Yosef, and the preparation for it is in all the heads of the month and all Rosh Chodeshim of the rest of the year. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Rosh Chodesh of Geula, as opposed to the beginning of the month of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh of Geula, this is a much higher level. And in general, it's the difference between the names Adnai and Yudke Vovke. Or the two levels in the name Yudke Vovke, Havaya de la Sata, Havaya de la Ela, the lower level of Shem Havaya and the higher level of Shem Havaya. What are these two levels? Shem Havaya Shalom Mata Matzilus, the lower Havaya is the Yudke Vovke that's lower in the world of Atzilus, and then V'Shem Havaya Shalom Matzilus. And then the upper level of Shem Yudke Vovke is the one that's higher than Atzilus, and even higher than that, Shem Havaya Shalach Tzimtzum. The upper Havaya is the Shem Havaya that comes after the first Tzimtzum, and then V'Shem Havaya Shalifnei Tzimtzum, and even the level of Yudke Vovke that's prior to the Tzimtzum. That's how far up is the Havaya de La'elam, which we have Beis Galus coming down, and Rosh Chodesh Nisan being of a totally different type of Rosh Chodesh than all the other Rosh Chodeshim. That in the brachas after Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, there is 4 times said emes in the right after Kriya Shema, emes v'yatzav v'nochin, we said 4 times over there the word emes, and then in Ezra's part we also say 4 times Ezra's. What's the idea of the 4 times emes that we're saying twice? So he says that these are these correspond to, there's 4 different types of levels of Geula that correspond to the 4 Geulas from Goliath, and then there's 4 Geulas of Mashiach's times. So just like there's 4 levels of emes before Ezra's, 4 levels of emes after Ezra's, the same thing, there is the Rosh Chodesh the way it is all the days of the year, and the Rosh Chodesh of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh of Geula. Just like there's the 2 manners that's mentioned before concerning the revelation of Rosh Chodesh in the world, so too there's 2 types of avodah that needs to precede it, that we said before. Through our inspiration down here below, we have a connection with that level. that the avodah of Erev Rosh Chodesh, there's sheyesh avodah shal pi tamadas. There's an avodah that's based on intellect and reason. V'yesh avodah shel l'maylam tamadas, and then there's an avodah that's beyond rational reason. L'maylam didavag bala, beyond measure and boundary. Afilum didavag bala the kedusha, even beyond the measure and boundary in the world of holiness. Now he's going to explain how this is in Rosh Chodesh Nisan itself, the levels of Yaakov and Yosef. So he says in line 7, the Protis Yosef, more in detail, Yesh Rosh Chodesh Nisan Gufa Shtei Abchinas Yaakov and Yosef. In Rosh Chodesh Nisan itself, there's the two levels of Yaakov and Yosef, as it's known, even higher than Seder Ishtalshalos, there are different levels. Similar to the well-known expression, Shagam benisim yesh seder, even in miracles there's an order. She'inyan seder eine shoylol hedram didavag bola. The idea that there's an order doesn't negate the fact that there's lack of measure and boundary. So you can have lack of measure and boundary. You could be dealing with a level that's believable. You could be dealing with a level that's higher than Seder Ishtalshalos. And still in all, there's the level of Yosef, there's the level of Yaakov. Just like in miracles, there's also a level that's called an orderly miracles. Just like there's a concept of a miracle, and there's a miracle within a miracle. For example, there's the miracle of ice coming down, borod, hail coming down in Mitzrayim, the Eser Makis. Those are miracles. But then there's the level that in the miracles there's another miracle. That in the hail there was fire, and the fire did not melt the hail, or the hail did not extinguish the fire that's in it. So there's different levels. There's an ordinary miracle, and there's a miracle within a miracle. Similar to what the Chazal say, a very interesting thing. Moshe Nissan Shal Yisrael. Moshe is called the miracle of the Yidden. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nissan Shal Moshe. And Hashem is the miracle of Moshe. K'Moshe Kosav Hashem Nisi. Like Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hashem Nisi. So Hashem is my miracle. Meaning, there is the way Moshe is higher than Seder Ishtalshalos in comparison to the Yidden, and then there's the way Hashem is higher than Seder Ishtalshalos in comparison to Moshe. So we see even in Nisim, there are different levels. The idea of these multiple levels and miracles in the name, as they correspond to the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, in addition to the two levels of the lower Shem Havaya and the higher Shem Havaya that we mentioned previously, that these all correspond to the level of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei as they have 4 letters. Then there's something that's brought down in Chassidus and Kabbalah, Yesh Gam Shem Havaya Shalamayla Ma'osis. There's the idea of the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that's beyond letters. In other words, beyond definition, beyond the vision. It's, if you will, the concept of whatever the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei stands for, beyond the limited form that it takes. So just like there is the miracles and miracles of miracles, or Shem Havaya de La'ela, and then there's Shem Havaya, it's beyond letters, so to v'cheinu ba'avoida, so to a person's avoida, shagam ba'avoida shalom ma'alam didavag boli, yeshlukim b'dargis, also in the avoida that's beyond measure and boundary. There are different levels. For example, self-sacrifice. The idea of Mesiras Nefesh means you're totally devoting yourself to Hashem beyond limitation. So even there is different types of beyond limitations in a person's avodah. Sheyesh Mesiras Nefesh Shekshura Mevia Lekiyama Torah Mitzvos. There's a level of self-sacrifice that's connected and brings about the fulfillment of Torah Mitzvos. Okamavur Betanya, like it's explained in Tanya. Tam Shetziv Moshe Rabbeinu L'Dor Shenichnasu La'aretz. Likrois Shkriya Shema Pamayim B'chol Yom L'Kabel Al Malch Shemayim Mesiras Nefesh. What's the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu in Chumash Dvarim commanded the Yidden? He was addressing the generation that was going into Eretz Yisrael, and he told them you should read Kriya Shema twice a day, because one needs to accept upon themselves Malchus Shamayim, the reign of heaven, but in a way of self-sacrifice. Why was there any need for speaking about self-sacrifice? They were promised, and Moshe Rabbeinu promised them that your fear and terror, etc., Hashem will give upon the nation. So therefore, they didn't need any self-sacrifice when they entered Eretz Yisrael to fulfill the mitzvahs. To deal with going into Eretz Yisrael, and for that matter, also fulfill the mitzvahs. Elam mishum shekiyama Torah mitzvah, top of page Yud Aleph, because the fulfillment of Torah and its mitzvahs, Tali Bezez, depend upon that. Sheyiskar tamid inyam mesiras nafshel Hashem. They should always remember his self-sacrifice to Hashem, like the Rebbe says, like the Rebbe explains in Tanya, that when a person remembers that if he were challenged and to give up his life for Hashem, every Yid would give up his life rather than bow down to Avodah Zarah. So in a similar vein, every Yid realizes, this is the point that Alter Rebbe brings home in Tanya Perikut Ches and Yates and on, every Yid has to realize that any Avera tears him away from Hashem. So just like he's willing to give up his life for not bowing down to Avodah Zarah, his love for Hashem should be so powerful that he wouldn't do anything not to do any Avera. So here we see how the power of Mesiras Nefesh is connected with Torah mitzvahs. That is a limited form of Mesiras Nefesh. It doesn't actually mean giving up his life. It means that he's willing to forego his taivas because of his potential readiness to give up his life. Yesh gam Mesiras Nefesh mitzadat, small line 3. There's also self-sacrifice on its own. That person's literally in a situation, chas v'sholom, where they have to give up their lives for Hashem. They're ready and willing to do that. And the Rebbe says the difference between the Mesiras Nefesh that's used to fulfill Torah mitzvahs versus the Mesiras Nefesh, the literal Mesiras Nefesh, is val derech hachiluk binyan hakabolas oil pulasa ubein hakabolas oil shel Roshon hakabolas oil shel Kol Hashana. Concerning, it's similar to the difference that we find that there is the daily Kabbalah oil, that a person accepts upon himself the yoke of heaven to do the mitzvahs on a daily basis. And this is why we say Shema before V'hoyim Shemoya, because first we devote ourselves to Hashem, we accept Hashem as King, and then we come V'hoyim Shemoya Tishmu Motzesai Shanech Mitzav Esma Yoim to do the mitzvahs. And then there's the Rosh Hashanah type of Kabbalah oil, which is a more general type of devotion that the servant accepts upon himself Hashem as King in a more general fashion. So just like there's this difference between the Kabbalah's oil of Rosh Hashanah that we're supposed to experience, our Rosh Hashanah in general, especially by the blowing of the shofar, where we're coronating Hashem as King, and that comes through the gate bittul of the people to the monarch. In a similar vein, there is the level of the difference between the Mesiras Nefesh that a person has, the self-sacrifice that a person uses to fulfill regular mitzvahs, versus the self-sacrifice that stands on its own. Both of them are self-sacrifice. Both are matters of the bli gvul, the infinite service of Hashem, and yet there are levels of their infinitude in their service of Hashem.